I think it's going. Let's do it. Christians are being deformed into anxious, joyless, untethered people by following unbiblical cultural rituals. Thankfully, we have a rich heritage of sacred practices that shape individuals, families, and churches into fully formed worshipers, so we can glorify God and enjoy Him forever as we live life in the liturgy. Did you get goosebumps?
I did. I don't really ever get goosebumps, so it was your delivery, I think.
Good. I've been around the block a few times. I'm Jarek. This is Joel.
Hi, I'm Joel.
If you don't know us, if you're watching this at this point, you already know us.
Yeah, you probably
know us. How'd we get here? What are we doing?
There's probably a handful of different ways we can answer that question. I don't want to over spiritualize this, but okay, I was sitting on the porch.
Please do.
Story time. I'm sitting on the porch, as I do most nights. I sit on the porch when I can, and I type in my phone, what are you most afraid to do?
Ooh.
Existential questions, just normal questions people ask themselves.
More plot points. When was this?
I could probably find the note on my phone. I bet it was like a month ago.
Okay.
So this is like the recent thing.
Yeah.
And I think it was either I'm developing the story as it goes. It was either that night or like the next day. You text me some ambiguous Jarek text or like, hey, I've got this thing. I think you're the guy. Oh, we make a good team. What did you say? You said, I have all the ambition and you have all the. I don't know.
Yeah, you have the skill and the craft.
Yeah, you put it nicely. Yeah.
Yeah, I can find out what I said, but okay, continue.
Yeah. So then, and it there was definitely something in the realm of, I kind of feel like not pigeonholed, but I feel like I've kind of given my life to very few things, and one of those things is worship and liturgy and those practices and reading about that and so it's kind of what makes it's what makes me tick in a lot of ways. And there's been a little bit of, well, what do I do with this not beyond the church, but like, God, what would you have me do to steward this stuff well? And so I think that was kind of at the heart of like that question of like, hey, if I was afraid to do something in the realm of worship and liturgy and spiritual formation and then you came along and kind of had a similar thing happening at the same time.
Right.
That kind of helped me put the pieces together, I think, in a way that I wasn't able to do by myself.
Right. So I still feel like there's not much flesh on what you're afraid of.
Oh.
Like you're saying. Do you have the note? What did you say? What are you most afraid of?
That's it. I just put the sentence down. I didn't know how to answer the question. So if I go back, we'll just keep unfolding this. If I go back maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, I had this impulse to take what, admittedly, take what knowledge that I feel like I've gained over the last 10 or 11 years of specifically being in a ministry in our church, and say, man, how can I help other people? I was seeing that there's a lot of church planters and pastors, and rightfully so, being resourced and trained, but not a lot of kind of their support teams or their worship guys or stuff in that realm. So I was like, oh man, maybe I'll try and reach out to some guys that I know that are in that space and newer churches, and not to say, hey, I'm this genius who's got it all figured out, but here's some, let's get together and talk and learn together, and maybe I can help you and you can help me.
Right.
So that's kind of a piece of it, where it's like this resourcing the church in the realm of worship. For those things, and that kind of never materialized because I don't think it was big enough. I think there was an even bigger, that thing that I'm afraid to do. That's a funny way of putting it. It's more just like, the full sentence was really like, what am I most afraid to do because I want it the most, and I think other people need it the most.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, the worshiping life of a person, the worshiping life of a family, the worshiping life of a church is massively important.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the thing, finding a way to grow. I want to grow. I'm always trying to grow myself in these areas. And so then I figured, just, hey, as I'm learning and growing and have these other things, how can maybe I bring other people along in that journey, and help other individuals and families and churches to grow as worshipers of God.
Yeah. And I think it's not to say that first thought is untrue, because I think it is true. And I think the thought about, support people around a church plant or whatever.
For sure.
Still true.
Still true. Yes.
And I think, right, the more scary vision is that really the reason that is even important in the first place is because ultimately the task is way bigger than helping a guy plan songs and confessions.
Yes. Yes, that's great. That's a decent byproduct, but it's not the center of the target, as it were.
Right. Yeah. So I guess then I suppose my side of the story.
Yeah, go for it.
I've watched you do what you do for 11 years now, and have always thought this is extremely unique, right? Because I've worked at other churches. I've done your job at other churches, at another church, and like, yes, those pieces of like, okay, what are you actually doing? Yes, that looks different in substance because of the material, and again, that's an important piece, but those things are informed by this much bigger understanding that we arrive at the words we sing, we arrive at the words we corporately, say together, confess together. We arrive at those things because of much bigger realities. Yeah. Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched you do that for 11 years, have been watching you do that for 11 years. And pretty early, like I said, hey, like, this isn't normal. This is, actually, no, it is normal. That's one of the things we're trying to prove. It is normal. It's not common.
Yes.
Right?
It's not common.
Those words matter. It's not common. And
like specifically, it's at least church we're in, like in that context, it's not a throwing a baby out with the bathwater approach to, I guess I don't like these terms, but like contemporary things, but it's deeply liturgical, and gospel centered. But it's everything is flowing from the scriptures,
right,
and very specific scriptures, and trying to say what is here, and how do we worship in the light of that and around that, week in and week out, every single day. That doesn't sound, that should be normal,
right?
I feel like that should be common, and I think historically it was, but yeah, you're right in this.
Yeah, because within the first couple years, what's funny is I haven't had this experience in a lot of years, where for some reason, I think right when we moved down here, it's like, when you make a change, like your old life kind of has a way of slowly like making its way out. So within the first couple of years, I had a number of experiences of just being at other churches, on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
And within those first few years, it was already very clear that there was major disconnects.
Yeah.
Even not knowing anything else, even just within their own gathering of like, you're preaching one thing and everything else that happened while I was here was not informed by that.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So that was a common thing.
Yes.
But then the other thing that I think is maybe more the niche that we eventually will get into is that the churches who are more integrated in that sense, they never have a guitar and bass and drums on the stage.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's this weird combination of just because we are significantly more orthodox, to use that term, it doesn't mean that the medium is only a piano or an organ, right?
Right.
That
Right.
we don't have to be siloed into there. So yeah, there's huge pieces of it that are just the practices of the liturgy in general, but then also even more unique is doing it in the way that you have done it now, and we've been doing it for 11 years. This is extremely unique, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
So I look at anything and I look for the opportunity. So
Yes.
I look at that and I'm saying, man, like if there is anybody can get on the internet and talk about anything, right?
Yeah.
But the people who I think are most influential are the ones who like you have something different to say, right? And I think in this area, this is something that I have seen that like there's something different and good and true and beautiful about what's happening here that I think needs to be said, right? So that's one big element of it. And I think I've said that to you for years.
You have. It takes a while to convince me of anything, but
yeah. And so then I guess from maybe my side of it, I have way more ambition than I have hours in a day. So I'm on this, pursuit of figuring out how I can treat my ability to see things like that differently, right? To how do I come alongside people like you to push endeavors like this?
Yep.
Because I'm less useful on my own.
Sure.
Right?
Same.
Yeah. Right? So that's where it's like, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like, but this feels right.
Yeah.
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 So there's that side of it. So here's the idea. Maybe I'll even bring this back to some of I reference this often. So I grew up in the Lutheran Church. What seems maybe somewhat normal now. Kind of watched this transition from a liturgical gathering to and they literally had different services. So that still exists. And then it's there's I think there's 3 services. There's a hybrid service next, and then the latest one on Sunday mornings is the contemporary one,
yeah.
right? And they look different. I think there's still probably some liturgy at that one, but it's that's the one where the drums are on the stage and this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I had that, and then the church I worked at was way more into there is no, well, I say there's no liturgy. There's always liturgy,
we'll get into
as we'll get to. But the liturgy did not include confession of sin. It did not include any profession. Did not include any absolution.
2 fast songs, couple slow songs.
Right. The benediction was usually a postlude of playing MGMT or something like that, right?
Hey, there's pizza in the foyer. Yeah.
Right, something like that. The coffee bar was enormous. So coming from that and then coming into what you had already developed with the liturgical practices of our gathering.
Yeah.
I think you were the one who sent it to me. Had sent me this video. It was Ian
Morgan Cron. Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about the liturgy. So he's Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's
yes, I remember. As you're saying this video, I remember.
So he's
I think he's Catholic. Yeah. He's
somebody posed him the question of when do we stop doing the liturgy? when can we stop doing this, right?
Yeah.
We're just doing this thing on repeat week in and week out, right? And his answer was beautiful. He said, when you become the liturgy.
Yeah. Oh.
That's when we can stop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you truly embody what you are professing, that's when you can stop.
Yeah. Because then that's when you know the liturgy did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in part, that's what we want to be doing every day.
Yes.
We want to be doing this so that every day we are becoming this, and ultimately we know that that fullness is not coming this side of eternity.
Right.
Right. So yeah, that was my was my full buy-in.
Yeah, let me spin off that same series of videos, and to talk about my background. He said in one of those videos, often God doesn't move seismically. And so if you look at I think what he was talking about is, you go to your normal, everyday contemporary church, and it's like they're catering to a drug addict. Where, okay, the goal is to they come in and you brought them to level 2. Okay, fine, that's enough to bring them back, and the next level is, okay, well, you got to at least give them a level 2 and up next time. And so you're just looking for this more seismic experience. Mm-hmm. And then he was talking about the beauty of the liturgy being, it's this plodding, show up, what are we going to do today? We're going to rehearse the gospel together.
Yeah, and at the same time, what is more seismic than that?
Right.
What is more seismic than you being pardoned of eternal damnation?
Absolutely. And being reminded of that. Yeah, and so it's that can feel small, and that can feel like, well, nothing's happening right now. Mm-hmm. I would argue that that's not true, but it is over time immersing yourselves in these biblical practices and patterns that are shaped by the Word of God, coming out of the Word of God, literally just retelling the gospel story, that end up in something seismic. Mm-hmm. And so how that plays into my background, I grew up in a not a Lutheran background, but in a charismatic kind of Pentecostal background. And one of the things that and there's good that comes with that, and there's all sorts of hairy stuff that comes with it too. And so I'm not trying to just dog on it all, but one of the tropes that was kind of tossed around there in terms of their gatherings was, or at least the churches I was a part of, was that, well, we have a plan, but we don't have an agenda. Which was just another way of saying we don't. I didn't grow up in this word liturgy is something I didn't hear until 12 years ago.
Sure.
And so every church has a liturgy. Every person has a liturgy. Right. It's just a way that you go about living your life, and particularly liturgy. How do you go about worshiping? Mm-hmm. So some are more formed and formal. Some have a plan, and they're going to stick to that plan because they believe in the plan and the God who helped them shape that plan. But I kind of grew up in this idea of, well, church is sort of a free for all. And again, seismic emotion is sort of the goal.
Right.
It's supposed to produce a certain feeling. And so the first time that I stepped into a liturgical church, I was in Omaha, Nebraska, coming out of mostly charismatic and just, baseline evangelical churches. And I remember being taken back. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say I instantly understood it, but something clicked in me when a guy got up and read a call to worship. And it was like, oh, like, I know why you're doing this. Like, I'm supposed to know, like, have my attention drawn off of myself onto God to see his holiness. And then it was like, okay, then we're gonna sing a song about that. And then, okay, what does holiness do, right? Like, what did Isaiah do? It's like, woe is me. I got some sin to confess, and then it just made a lot. So the more I walked in that pattern, the more I was like, yes, this is the missing piece. And it's not throwing all these other things away necessarily, but it's what's going on. There's a story that needs to be told. This experience is shaping and forming me. It's shaping and forming the people here for good or ill. And so, man, I was that experience maybe 12, 13 years ago now. I'm losing time, but solidified in me that, and then that this liturgical approach to not just Sunday morning but life is super important. And then it was from there. It was like this: who else has been doing this? Where did this come from?
Yeah. And
realizing, oh my gosh, I'm standing in a stream that I believe goes all the way back to the scriptures.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
How providential
yeah.
for you. Like Justin had to invite you out to Omaha.
Yeah.
And like off of observably a guy who can sing and play guitar.
Yeah, I think that's all it was. I actually don't know.
Right. So it's like, how providential to pluck you out of that, and so quickly and radically spit out like what has been happening now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in that little story, I mean, there's definitely a picture of there were some other guys and some other churches and some other faithful people who were trying to kind of do what we're talking about now, and they were trying to rediscover what biblical liturgical practices look like. And they were doing it, and then when we wanted to go plant our church, obviously that experience of that year or so was ingrained in us, but then they also like resourced us and said, hey, this is the best of what we got right now, and then we just kind of take it and run with it.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And so like I feel like, again, a decade or more later, having built off of the foundation of other guys and seeing that experience and where that's taken us, it's kind of this another motivating factor to say, how can we do the same thing, but expand it? Definitely looking at the church and how can we equip and educate and inspire the church towards these things, but also these things have implications again for individuals, the way that we approach our days, and our own worship practices. But then also like, I'm a parent, and we were talking before this, and it's a lot of this is like I'm building the airplane in the air.
Yeah.
How do I take what I know about Sunday morning liturgy practices and maybe what I know about my own individual practice, and how do I help my family to worship and enjoy Jesus and be confident in it? And so I'm kind of pulling from things that I know while also like learning. And so it's my heart to kind of share those things that I'm learning and like let people in on that process in hopes that it actually helps equip them, but also kind of inspires them to get on the same path, Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So what you kind of mentioned there, I said at the beginning, thankfully we have a rich heritage of sacred practices that shape number 1, individuals. Number 2, families. Number 3, churches. Maybe in the reverse order. I don't know. Into fully formed worshipers, right? So kind of looking at these 3 spheres, looking at you as a person before the face of God, looking at your family, okay, looking at this corporate gathering. Our goal here, okay, so when we say life in the liturgy, we're talking about all 3 of those spheres. Yeah. We're talking about, and I mean, just to like foreshadow a little bit here, we're talking about helping educate in all 3 of those spheres and helping provide resources in all 3 of those spheres, right?
Yes.
So are we going to be making music? You better believe it, right? But that's one piece, right? We want to be making music that we can sing corporately. We want to be making music that is helpful to you and your family outside of the corporate gathering. Yeah. And in all 3 of those, we want to help people learn and grow and understand what we're doing better, right? Yes. We want to help, like we said before, there's other people who do the same thing Joel does, leading churches in this task. We want to help those guys. Yeah. We also want to help you as individuals and for us, for our kids, right? To have a greater understanding of why are we doing what we're doing. Not just, hey, like blindly follow this stuff, but like we are learners and we should understand this stuff. Yeah. And that task is maybe limitless.
Yeah. I feel like the more we talk, the more it's like, oh my gosh.
This keeps growing.
I need to stay focused on one thing. But it is exciting.
Yeah. So that's really the goal, right? To more formally. Okay. Here's the other thing. You said we're building the plane in the air. Yeah. What we don't want to do is put our grandkids in that same position, right?
Absolutely not.
Where they don't have this stuff to stand on, because the truth is it exists, right? Yes. And like we began, if we mindlessly, if we unconsciously follow the unbiblical cultural rituals, we're going to drift. We're going to end up in a place that produces anxiety, in a place that does not possess the joy of the Lord, and is unattached, is untethered to everything that has come before us. Yes, right. We're not standing alone. Yes. And so a huge piece of what we want to do is think, okay, like I want my kids to have a different experience. I want them to develop practices within our home that they have a different starting position than I do. Yeah. Right?
Absolutely.
That because what could happen then, right? Yeah. I know the work that I have had to do. I know the work that we have had to do and are doing, right? Part of the vision is like I want them to start miles ahead.
Yes.
Right? Because then what could they do?
Yeah. Right? Oh, that's even more exciting than what we're doing in the present.
Right.
Like I said, I wish I could we are, and the church is, the more that you dig into it, you realize you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and you realize I am standing in a stream that's already there. But until you turn around and look at it, or you look down, you don't realize. And I think a lot of people, myself included, can believe the lie that I just don't. I don't know how to lead my family in family worship. Okay, like, dude, I'm with you. Right. So what are we going to do about it? And that's a piece of it. How can we resource you in a way that's like, hey, this is working for us, and we know this works because we're practicing it and we're loving it, and we're trying to do our best to root this in the scriptures and what God would want. For me, something that I was telling him the other day and pondering this stuff, and something else that's been brewing in the background is just like the memorization of the Psalms, and realizing that the Psalms were not just prayers and not just poems, but they're songs, and just like imagining what did these sound like, not trying to capture that, but in doing that, I've memorized Psalms, and my faith is just like skyrocketed. How do we do that? I know a lot of us feel helpless in the task of memorizing scripture, having it in the background of our mind. We want to resource you in that. So, I mean, like you said, the sky's the limit in terms of what we want to do, but those are some of the ideas to kind of, again, build this from something that doesn't quite exist.
Yep.
And then see where it goes from there. And if our kids picked it up and made it even better, that would be more than I could ask for.
Cool. So there's a little bit of it.
There's something. It's good.
So we can glorify God, enjoy Him forever as we live life in the liturgy. How do I stop this? Stop straight.